Welcome, welcome, beautiful human, to day one of another 3-day reset. I'm excited about this month's 3-day reset because it happens to coincide with a whole lot of resetting that seems to be going on in humanity at large. We have Lent starting tomorrow. We have Ramadan starting the day after that, I believe. We have the Chinese Lunar New Year beginning tomorrow as well. And so that is the theme that I'm going to be overlaying our usual 3R framework. Today is the last day of the year of the wood snake, according to the Chinese lunar calendar. And boy, I think most of us would agree it has been a year of transition, transformation, that kind of slithery snakiness that is involved with a lot of growth. Sometimes it's a little painful. All that said, at the beginning of a new year, it's a great time to let go of all that no longer serves us, shed that old skin. There's no use in judging it or even really assessing it. Don't really need to think about all the reasons that our old skin turned out the way it did or wore the way it did. It's time to just let it go, let it fall to the wayside, and start to explore our new selves, the new self that is being revealed after this last cycle of transformation in the last year. Transformation, I believe, is always going on, but it definitely comes in waves and pulses. And one of my intentions, more and more throughout this life, is to align myself more with those natural cycles, things bigger and smaller than me, that just help make it a little bit easier, frankly, to get through some of the days. A big aim of mine is to make things a little bit easier. I like to aim for those small steps, those little pauses, those slight shifts. I believe it's those that add up to our lives, really. It's just like the straws that break the camel's back, those things that add up, that stress us out. I hope to provide reminders and fuel, fodder for strengthening our backs, shaking off some of those little stressors and straws so that we can be more resilient and hopefully live lives that are at least a little bit better. I want to celebrate you before we begin for arriving here, wherever you've arrived from. It is really worth celebrating that you are here to practice learning how to regulate your nervous system or improving how coherent you are. I really do believe this is work that can dramatically improve our future. The more of us do it, the more of us hold this coherent space and hopefully share it with others, teach it to others. So I thank you for bringing yourself here, and I encourage you to share, connect with the rest of the group in the comments if you are here via replay, because this is an ongoing practice. It's not a one-time thing. I record these monthly and then share the replays and hopefully put them in a place where others can find them at any time and use them as needed. So if you are enjoying a replay and using this at the perfect time for you, I would love to know that. And in any case, I celebrate you and thank you. This really is important work that affects us all. And it's going to make your life better, most importantly, for you right here and now. Let's begin with rising to meet ourselves. I shared a brief self-assessment, and if you haven't already checked that out, do be sure to check that out after our session today. The real point of a self-assessment is not to grade yourself, not to compare yourself to others. Sometimes it can be helpful to compare yourself to your past self or your future self, but it's not a competition. It's just an assessment, a way of checking in with where you are right now, hopefully honestly and authentically, because it's really for you, not for anyone else. And you're welcome to share it with me or with the group, but whether you do or don't isn't really the point. I mean, it's sharing sometimes is helpful for accountability and just for community. So that's the point. But the point of the self assessment is not to place you on some judgment scale, even though I often use this 1 to 10 rating scale or 1 to 5 scale. That's just, it's just a way of measuring for your own benefit, not to put yourself down. I really want to stress that because I know very well the temptation to put myself down with my rating scale. And so I want you to resist the temptation, the urge to scowl at yourself or frown at yourself if you find yourself with a low rating. And in fact, you could look at a low rating as a great opportunity for excelling into the future for growth. And you could look at a high rating as a little bit of a warning, perhaps, of a place where you can congratulate yourself for doing well, but also be aware that when you're at a high point, you're likely to fall to a low point. And when you're at a low point, there's great opportunity to go toward the high point. That said, I think that even as we're oscillating between these high and low points, we can raise our entire, so like you might be oscillating at these highs and lows down here, and then through work that improves your life, improving your behaviors and your thoughts and your relationships, you could end up oscillating higher up in in a whole different bandwidth or a whole different frame of reference, a whole different life, really. So that's my aim for all of us is to, again, improve our lives, even if it's just a little bit. And in fact, a little bit is exactly perfect. If we improved our lives 1% every week, imagine how much better our lives would be in a year, in 10 years, by the time we're grandparents. I am super excited that I'm going to become a grandparent this year in like a month or so. I can hardly stand it. The weight is revving up, but as that is very true, there's also this increasing awareness of how important it is for us to be creating a bedrock, a solid foundation for raising our grandchildren in. And that comes from having practiced how to calm ourselves, how to maintain coherence. And right now, we're living in a world where there's a lot of things pulling at our attention, a lot of things inviting us to become dysregulated for very good reasons. But I invite you to join me in letting go of that regularly, as often as possible, really. And I want this to be a safe space where you can find reminders and guidance practices that can help us all return to that calm coherence that I do think we all want more of. I do think we all recognize is the better way to navigate even turbulent times. So back to the self-assessment. It's really about assessment and then acceptance. So hand in hand with assessing ourselves needs to be this aspect of self acceptance, maybe even self love, self appreciation. To really appreciate where we are right now is the point. So, as we're doing this first day, this first bit of self assessing, I encourage you to resist the urge to judge, to put yourself down, and to just notice. And if you can, notice with a little extra appreciation. If you can't get to a full appreciation, at least aim for acceptance. I also want to remind us all that it is totally normal to wax and wane, to be dysregulated sometimes. And as we're about to go through some physical processes and pay attention to our bodies on the two sides of the body, I want to remind you that it is very normal for the two sides to be different. And as I'm going to ask you to inquire, notice how the two sides are different, I want you to do that with an air of curiosity and appreciation. For example, if one side seems weaker than the other, that could be for a lot of different reasons, but there are going to be valid reasons for one side to be weaker than the other, one side to be shorter than the other, one side to be more resistant to stretching or more in pain. Again, there's all this history that our bodies are carrying. So, this practice that I want to lead us through today is a somatic process, which is based on some fascial release techniques. And I'm going to be creating a longer video that you can watch. That's going to go through the whole series and break it down a little bit more. But I have broken that longer series down into 3 little parts for our 3 days together for this reset. I mention that just because these are relatively short and they are very effective in their conciseness. But if this feels good to you when we start to get into it and you want more, I will be sharing a video with longer segments so that you can get a more full body practice. Because of the limitations of working in this box here, I'm going to be focusing on the upper body from a seated position. Really, when we're talking about fascia lines, which are those lines of that white gristly stuff, when we're dead, it's gristle. When we're alive, our fascia is the stuff that holds everything together. It's connective tissue, but it's also conductive. It conducts our nerve impulses. It conducts chemistry. It's largely made of water that is in a gel state that then turns back into more fluid liquid when we move more. And it's only now being discovered how much is going on with our fascia as far as communication throughout our body. When you think about the fact that it connects every part of our body, it makes sense that it's highly involved in communication in our body. I'm trying to resist the urge to get too deep into the fascia stuff because I don't want to overwhelm you with too much information, but suffice it to say that when we move the fascia and we stretch with fascia in mind, we are going to be turning that gel into more of a liquid. So we're creating more movement, so more ability to move in the body. And as I lead you through some of these exercises, I encourage you to keep that in mind and feel for that sensation in your body. When I studied myofascial release 25 or so years ago, I was blown away. I had some profound shifts in my perception of my own body and this human experience when I started to feel these fascia releases. So it'll often come in like a wave. It feels like melting butter. And if you think of it as your tissue turning from a gel back into a more fluid liquid, that can explain the sensation that you might feel. There's a lot going on there, and we're still learning about it, but I just encourage you to feel for that as we go through some of these practices. We're going to be using what's called bottom-up practice or somatic practice, which has to do with moving the body and affecting the mind by moving the body. Top-down practice would be using the mind to affect the body. And current research shows that the most effective processes are a combination of both. So you can get to either one through the other. And in this case, we're going to be, well, we've sort of started with the mind, right? I've been explaining, and now we're going to move into some bottom-up practices using the breath and the body to impact, to calm the mind, really, and help reset the mind and bring the mind into a more positive state. And then we're going to integrate that sensation, that bottom up stuff, with a little bit more mind stuff. So some of that you can do on your own via some journaling this evening. I encourage you to do that. So the practice I want to do today involves some symbolic shedding of the skin. And it's really just a forward bend and a back bend or a lifting. It's really just a forward and a backward motion is what we're going to be focused on. And we're going to be combining that with some breath. Later, starting tomorrow, I'm going to be adding some more crossing of the body and more wringing out or twisting through those fascia lines. But I wanted to just warm us up today with some very simple front and back lines. Now, as I mentioned, I'm going to be doing these seated today, but ideally, and in the longer videos that I will share, we would be focused on the entire body line from the toes and maybe even extending into the earth through the whole front of the body and all the way up. If we're lifting the arms, it would be all the way up through the chin, through the arms, up into the sky if possible. And again, you want to think about that if it helps to visualize that white fascia stuff. Ever seen an anatomy picture with the skin taken off? You will see lots of white stuff that's holding everything together. That's our fascia. It also crisscrosses across the body, which is why we're going to be doing more twisting in the next couple days. But for now, I would like you to just try to visualize that you have a crisscrossing network of those lines up your back, and you have a crisscrossing network of those lines up your front. And we're just going to be activating those lines. You can start by dropping the shoulders and relaxing and straightening the spine. And I think I'm going to turn sideways. I should be checking in with my camera, making sure I'm in frame. See if this camera will scoot back a little bit. I don't think it's going to. I'm going to be curving the whole body forward. And again, if I were standing, I would be really focused on that back line, all the way back behind my heels, and then curving up the backs of the legs, across the pelvis, and through the spine, through the neck, and down through the head. Just wanted to talk us through it a little bit, and then with the breath, let's do that. Just rolling down and really just going to stay here for about 30 seconds. So at least like about 3 breaths. And on each one, so when you get down to a place where it feels like about as far as you can comfortably go, then we're going to take a deep breath in here and not try to stretch. Just going to stay right here and fill your lungs with air, really just trying to expand everything as you breathe in. Expanding, expanding. One more time, expanding, another deep breath, and then exhale and just relax into that. And see if you don't stretch and feel that melting down. Sometimes a surprising amount more. For me, it feels like melting butter, but it's something I've practiced. So if you're not feeling it this time, don't worry. Just practice it. Do the best you can. Let's take another breath in here. Again, not forcing any stretch, just breathing where we are and expanding the lungs, and going to sip in air 3 times. So breathing in and then again, a little bit more and a little bit more. Really pushing those lungs open, and then just relaxing down, rolling into a ball if that's comfortable. You could aim your chest for your knees. I'm going to come up a little bit so that I can stay in frame, but you just continue to relax and allow that to melt down. Wherever you're noticing some tension in your body, just bring your awareness there and allow it to melt. Maybe spend about 3 breaths down there. Just maybe even push into, sometimes I like to roll my pelvis a little bit, push into that low back, rounding the spine some more. And then again, from this position, we're going to take one more breath, breathing in And again, a little bit more. And one more sip of air. Really expanding the lungs, feeling that expansion. To me, it feels really good. And then just exhaling through the mouth or through the nose, whichever you prefer, and just melting into that. I'm going to allow myself some melting onto my lap here, just letting the arms dangle. I think I'm fully out of frame, so I'm going to come back, but you just let your arms hang. If you can, relax your chest on your legs. Just let your whole upper body melt into your lower body. Feel that lengthening through the whole back fascia line of the body. And you're welcome to stay there as long as feels good. Whenever you're ready to start rolling up, I want you to very slowly, starting at the bottom of the spine, at the tailbone, if you can, start by tipping your pelvis and slowly one vertebra at a time, just enjoying that opening of every vertebra as you come all the way back up to seated upright. I'm going to see if my camera will adjust. I have an adjusting setting. There we go. That's trying to keep up with me. Let's just shake that off. Maybe do a little figure eighting with the shoulders. Can do some shoulder rolls forward, some shoulder rolls backwards, some bouncing up and down, shaking it off. Just notice how your back line feels now if you're focusing in on your fascia, the whole back side. Again, you might feel a little bit off balance because we did just mostly focus on the upper body. And if you want the full body experience, I'll be making us a video for that. But take about 15 seconds to 30 seconds just to notice how your body feels. And later, if you end up journaling about this experience, if you can, take note of how the back feels different from the side, from the front, and how the two sides of your body feel different. Sometimes you might notice, like I have some pain going on in my low back that's been shifting sides, just kind of air quotes fun to notice. Uh, just take note. Again, it's not to judge. It's not to compare in a negative or competitive way. It's to let your body know that you care and that you're listening and that you're paying attention, and start to get to know yourself a little bit better. Start to notice how your day-to-day actions and inactions are adding up to your ability to move in your body throughout your day. So we're going to do now the front line. And again, it's going to be modified because we're seated. We're just going to do the best we can with what we have from where we are. That's the best we can do all the time, I think. Not let not let perfection get in the way of practice and progress. So again, starting with some upright seatedness. And this time I'm going to start with focusing in on that fascia line all the way from the toes and just imagining that I am activating the fascia lines up the front of the body, through the legs, through the pelvis, up the center of the body, and lifting the chin. So I want you to focus on more of a lift and then less of a back bend. Although if you feel like adding some back bend, you are of course welcome to, but do be mindful of the neck. Your head is very heavy. Sometimes, especially if you have some strain there already, that can increase the tension. And we're not looking to increase the tension. We're just looking to stretch that whole front line of the body. So I'm going to interlace my hands like this, and I'm going to turn them and roll under my, I'm showing you outside of position just so you can get the idea. There's going to be a real rolling and lifting that I'm going to do under the back of my head here on my neck. So I'm pulling the skin and the fascia, and I'm also supporting that heavy head. And then I'm going to lift these arms up. So that is a much better position that we could stay here a little bit and do some breath and activate that front line of fascia. So breathing in and again, And a little bit more. And then just allowing that melting. I got a little crack in my back already there. And then just settling into that for a few seconds before moving into the next breath. Breathing in. And again. And a little bit more. Trying to expand those lungs. And then lifting. I'm finding this more challenging on the front line from the seated position, which makes sense because my legs are folded the wrong direction. But we're just going to keep doing the best we can. Kind of pulling my legs under the chair a little bit. We're going to do one more breath. Breathing in, expanding the lungs, and a little bit more. And one more time. And then up a little bit more if you can, activating that front line, and then coming back to center. Again, if at any point you're feeling dizzy or lightheaded or uncomfortable in that practice, especially with the backward fold, but also with the forward fold, just stop, just listen to your own body, ease out of it, ease into it. There's no one way, there's not one right way or one wrong way to do any of this. And it's about getting to know ourselves better, getting to be able to regulate ourselves better, getting to be able to heal better from the ailments of life. As you come back to upright, make sure and just move your body around a little bit. I encourage you to move your shoulders up and down, maybe twist your rib cage around a little bit. Mine feels a little bit sticky after that. I've been having some back issues, as I mentioned, so that activated some of them for me. And it's a good reminder, like, don't feel like you have to push yourself into any sort of activated state that is uncomfortable and painful. That's not the point at all. So always be always be mindful and kind to your own body. And you are the main instructor in this navigation system. So now let's take just another 15 seconds or so to move the body around and notice what's going on in the body. Notice where there's tension. Notice if the two sides are different at all. Again, later, if you do a little journaling about this, which I encourage you to do, you can note any sensations that came up, had any symbols come up, any particular thoughts or feelings. All of that is worth noting. And over time, the more you get in the practice of noting those kind of things, the more they might start to become meaningful data for you. So I mentioned how we are still learning about our fascia, and there's some new exciting research that shows that our fascia actually has more nerve endings than our skin. It has over 250 million nerve receptors. It's actually our largest sensing organ, even though the skin has previously been called that. And when you think about what that actually means, it's pretty remarkable and starts to make a lot of sense why stretching feels so good. And I have some new dog friends I've been hanging out with this year, and they remind me how much other animals generally do those long, full body stretches from head to toe, from finger to toe. And I have naturally been drawn to those kind of stretches my whole life. So it's exciting to me that we are starting to establish the validity of some of these stretching practices for our health and wellness. When we move slowly and breathe deeply, we activate specific types of receptors in our fascia called Ruffini endings. Those directly signal your nervous system to downshift out of fight or flight, and they only get activated with slow stretches like 30 seconds to 60 seconds long, at least 15 seconds. I mentioned earlier to be on the lookout for, or to see if you could start to sense that releasing sensation that happens. And when I was a practicing body worker doing myofascial release, I put my fingers on a ball, a bundle of muscle fibers that are all knotted up and get the person to breathe into that space for usually about 3 breaths and sometimes as many as 5 breaths. A person who's well practiced can often do it in the first breath, but on average, it takes about 3 breaths of just slow, steady pressure, and in this case, a slow, steady held stretch, and with a deep breath into that spot, that expansion, that breath is expanding that area just a little bit, and then when the breath releases, that whole area just melts and relaxes. It's actually a very pleasant and profound sensation, usually, at least for me. So I'd love to know if you experience any of that during these 3 days of practice as I introduce some of these techniques to you. That's what I have for you today, and I'd love to know if you have any questions, if you had any profound epiphanies while experiencing this. Again, I encourage you to check out the longer video that I'm going to make where I'm going to demonstrate more of the full body version of this. But I will be continuing on with shorter half body versions. Tomorrow, we'll be doing the reconnection session where I will be focused more on side to side, some twisting. And then Wednesday, we will be wrapping it up with some anchoring into the body, some planting of intentional seeds, and riding off on our fire horses into the rest of February. Thank you for joining me today. Remember that you're worthy of your own unconditional love. First and foremost, always and in always. Thank you for joining me and working on becoming a more coherent, clear person. I'll see you tomorrow. Same bat channel, same bad time. Bye.